Good to see you all. Our first reading this morning comes from, can you hear me okay online? Yeah, okay. Comes from a book called The Wonder of Small Things, Poems of Peace and Renewal. And the poem that I'm going to read is by Sue Ann Gleason, and it's called Ask Me. Ask me for the measure of starter and water in a loaf of sourdough bread, how to gently pull the dough across the surface of a marble slab, folding it like an envelope so that the gluten strengthens slowly and with intention. Ask me how those loaves of sourdough kept my hands steady and my mind occupied on days that fear and anxiety rose as exponentially as the starter. Ask me about my grandmother's kitchen, the sound of onions sizzling in a cast iron skillet, the smell of garlic, the shape of her hands chopping vegetables, teasing pie crust over heaps of cinnamon-soaked apples. Ask me about candles on countertops, how she lit those candles daily and prayed to patron saints, the depth of her faith reflected in the whisper-thin pages of her prayer book, and the 7 children she raised in the midst of the Great Depression. Ask me about the sound of her voice praying the rosary in Italian and how that became a lullaby, singing me to sleep. Ask me about breakfast in her home, thick slabs of toasted bread slathered with cinnamon, butter, and smiles. Ask me about my grandfather's breakfast, the church of cornflakes, the tap, tap, tap of spoon on the delicate shell of a soft-boiled egg, how he swirled the remaining milk in the bowl with the last drop of thick, dark coffee from his cup. And if my memory serves me here, a shot of whiskey to warm his belly for a day digging ditches, the price he paid to live in America. Ask about the garden out back, how in summer months it resembles the one my grandfather tended, sun-ripened tomatoes, basil, and beans. How every morsel in my kitchen, from sourdough loaves to the slow simmer of tomato sauce, is the love language of my grandmother's hands. Our second reading this morning comes from John chapter 17, verses 6 to 19. I want to give you a little context so that you might think of the passage through a particular lens as I read it. I don't know if it's just because it's Mother's Day, but this passage depicting Jesus praying for his disciples just before his betrayal by Judas, his denial by Peter, and his arrest and death sentence strikes me as a portrait of parenthood done the right way. Jesus prayed for his disciples. I have made your name known to those whom you gave me from the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything you have given me is from you. For the words that you gave to me, I have given to them, and they have received them and know in truth that I came from you. And they believe that you sent me. I am asking on their behalf. I am not asking on behalf of the world, but on behalf of those who you gave me, because they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world. And I am coming to you, Abba, holy God. Protect them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one. While I was with them, I protected them in your name, and I guarded them, and not one of them was lost, except the one destined to be lost, so that the scripture might be fulfilled. But now I am coming to you, and I speak these things in the world, so that they may have my joy made complete in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I am not asking you to take them out of the world, but I ask you to protect them from evil. They do not belong to the world, but as I do not belong to the world, sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, so that they also may be sanctified in truth. It's almost like an illustration of motherhood. We hear Jesus say to God, they were yours and you gave them to me. On good days, we often think of the children in our lives as gifts from God. I'll refrain from saying where they come from on the bad days. In this passage, we see parental acts of devotion, like praying for those that you're entrusted to care for, sharing your faith with them, asking that God protect them with the knowledge that you won't always be around to do so, and guiding them, knowing that despite your best efforts, there is a risk that they may get lost along the way. There was one line in this prayer that spoke loudest to me. I speak these things in the world so that they may have my joy made complete in themselves. That's all we want, isn't it? For our kids to be happy. And yet, if you do a Google search, you'll find a plethora of research articles and book titles that called Why You Should Stop Saying, I Just Want My Kids to Be Happy. There's a myriad of reasons why we should consider stop saying this, from the pressure that it puts on them, the ways that the message can lead to selfishness, to the need for us to teach our young people how to handle negative emotions and not just the positive ones. The experts say that the next time that we're about to tell yourself or a friend or your child, all that matters is being happy. Maybe instead we can say, all that matters is making the world a bit happier than you found it. All of that being said, if we desire for the young people in our lives to have the kind of joy that is made complete in themselves, like the scripture says, what can we do to help? I believe that this scripture gives us a clue about what we might do. The passage concludes this way, and for their sakes I sanctify myself, so that they also may be sanctified in truth. To sanctify means to set something apart or someone apart as holy. In order to pass on to the next generation joy made complete in oneself, we nurturers have to turn inward and take care of our own business so that we can model the right priorities. How might we go about sanctifying ourselves as holy? The approach is different for everyone, I imagine. You know best the challenges of your inner life. You also know what spiritual practices that bring you back to solid ground, those that help bolster your faith and restore your hope, even if it's only for a little while. If you think about it, the opposite of feeling holy is feeling unworthy, something that I would venture to say that we all struggle with in varying degrees. I've been learning about the Buddhist concept of the trance of unworthiness. I wonder if it'll resonate with you. Dr. Tara Brach, who's a psychologist and a meditation teacher, she's the author of a book called Radical Acceptance. And she describes the concept with a story where she describes a nightmare that she has from time to time. And again, it might be that you too have this from time to time. She says, for years, I've had a recurring dream in which I am caught in a futile struggle to get somewhere. Sometimes I'm running up a hill, sometimes I'm climbing over boulders or swimming against a current. Often a loved one is in trouble or something bad is about to happen. My mind is speeding frantically, but my body feels heavy and exhausted. I move as though through molasses. I know I should be able to handle the problems, but no matter how hard I try, I can't get where I need to go. Completely alone and shadowed by the fear of failure, I am trapped in my dilemma. Nothing else in the world exists but that. I think most of us have had some version of this dream, at least I know I have. This dream captures the essence of the trance of unworthiness. In our dreams, we often seem to be the protagonists in a pre-scripted drama, fated to react to our circumstances in a given way. When we are in the trance, we are caught up in our stories and fears about how we might fail. We are in much that same state. We're living in a waking dream that completely defines our experience of life. The rest of the world is merely a backdrop as we struggle to get somewhere, to be a better person, to accomplish, to avoid making mistakes. As in the dream, we take our stories to be truth, compelling reality, and they consume much of our attention. Inherent in this belief that no matter how hard we try, we are always in some way falling short. All the while, the next generation of young folks are paying close attention and soaking it all in, noticing the ways that we strive to be something other than what we are. The belief that we are deficient and unworthy makes it difficult to trust that we are truly loved. Many of us live with an undercurrent of hopelessness about ever feeling close to other people. We fear that if they realize that we are whatever, fill in the blank, boring or not as smart as we want to be or insecure, selfish, they'll reject us. If we're not attractive enough, maybe no one will love us the way we yearn to be loved in an intimate way. We yearn for an unquestioned experience of belonging, to feel at home with ourselves and others, and at ease and fully accepted. But the trance of unworthiness can keep the sweetness of belonging out of reach. But people of faith, I bring you good news in the form of the full measure of God's grace. When you read the scriptures as a love letter from God to you, and you start listening to the other ways that God is still speaking, still sending you love notes, and you start to believe that you are the apple of God's eye, just as you are, you begin to awaken from the trance of unworthiness. You begin to see yourself as holy and to make choices and take actions that set you apart with confidence that God has your back. When we seek God's face and ask to be granted understanding about the depths of God's love for us, just as we are, we stand up a little straighter with our heads a little higher, and our strut becomes a little more certain. When people meet us, they sense something that they can't quite describe. When we feel holy on the inside, set apart through our relationship with God, it shows on the outside. We no longer allow people to treat us anyway, for we know God deems us of the utmost worth. And when our foot slips, God's steadfast love holds us up. This Christian walk that we're on is one that maybe you inherited it from your parents, or maybe you discovered it on your own. God made a way to cross your path and left you an invitation to the most beautiful party, to a different kind of lifestyle, an alternate way of seeing things, marked by indescribable gratitude and a desire to work towards the liberation of others. Jesus said it this way, so that they may have joy made complete in themselves. And our job is to pass that invitation to a life of faith on to our children, to pass on the spirit of worthiness to them as the most important inheritance. That's what I mean by generational wealth, a legacy of faith, knowing that you are loved just as you are by the rock who birthed us, by she who is glory, by the womb of creation. As we try to do right by our children, we turn to she who speaks life. We humble ourselves in praise and in prayer as we say the prayer for our kids the way that Jesus prayed for his disciples. But now I am coming to you, and I speak these things in the world so that they may have my joy made complete in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I am not asking you to take them out of the world, but I ask you to protect them from evil. Sanctify them in truth. Your word is truth, and you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sakes, I sanctify myself, so that they also may be sanctified in truth. God, help us to pass down the love language of our grandmothers. We are tethered to those who have come before us, and we are determined to help our kids realize just how holy they are, and to know that a life of faith will help them have the kind of joy that Jesus had, made complete in themselves. This is the good news of God. Amen.